In the next few episodes, we will be talking about how we can use reactive programming for forms, how we can build forms using this approach. And you may ask why. So if you think about this on a more fundamental level, programming is about creating programs so that humans can interact with computers. So it's the human-computer interaction. And now computer or your program is waiting for some data, for some input, and humans provide this input by either typing on a keyboard or using the mouse, by touching the trackbar. So there are different ways, different means of providing data, providing input to the computer so that it can be used by your program. And if you think about this, those interactions are events because they happen in a sequence. And what's important here, or what's interesting here, is that, and you never know when a particular event will happen. So for example, I can stare, if I have a form, I can just stare on it. I don't have to do anything, I can just read. And then at a given moment, I can just start typing something in one of the fields. There's a sequence and we don't know when those events, each interaction with computer will arrive. And that's the reason why reactive programming is so adapted to this. Because if you start thinking about streams of events, you have this general idea, this general process you can use now everywhere. And in particular, forms are perfect for that. So we will try to see how we can do that in Flutter using RxDart. And I think I will split this whole form tutorial into several episodes because there's a lot of things to cover here. So before we start, I upgraded the dependencies in our application, so we have some errors. So I've seen in the comments that some of you stumbled upon those errors. So let's fix them now. If you haven't updated your dependencies, it should be good, but it's a good idea to be always up to date. So you have to do Flutter pub upgrade inside the project directory. Once it's done, it will update two of our dependencies. The first one is RxDart. If you open now the problems bar, let me make it slightly bigger. So the first problem comes from the RxDart. So they changed the API for this library. So instead of using debounce, we have to use now debounce time. And that's all, the error disappears. Okay, so now we have a second problem, which comes from this plugin called Flutter Slidable. So they changed the API as well. So instead of using delegate, you now use action pane, and it's not slidable drawer delegate, but slidable drawer action pane. Like that. Okay, done. The first thing we will do is that we will add the button which disappeared so that we can go to the the message compose screen. Let me see. So we have this compose button and then we have message compose, which is actually a screen. So I will move it to the screen directory so it's everything in one place. But just so you are aware, we will change that later because I don't like splitting files by function. We will split them in a different way. But for now it's okay. Let's leave it like that. So we have this compose button here and we had to disable it. So we will put it back. So here in the inbox screen, which is this screen over here, in scaffold, we can do floating action button. And we can do compose button, the one we created earlier. And we will just pass an empty array because we will refactor all this thing later. So now, as you can see, we have the button and I can click on this, but it doesn't work because we have to fix the path because we moved the directory, the file, I mean, to a different directory like that. So it should work now. Okay, so that's the form. And as you remember, you can type something here and it will validate the form. Now let's try to change this by using reactive programming. So I can close that. So the first thing you will notice is that we have this message compose screen over here and we have this state right inside the widget. And on top of that, we are using a stateful widget. Ideally, I would like to have in my application only stateless widgets because it's just easier to manage. But then you may ask where we will put the state. So we will try to put the state on the edges of our application, if I may use that expression, which means that we will try to keep the widgets as simple as possible and let managers to deal with the state. And then all the widgets will just observe managers like that, and they will react. They will change themselves in response to what, let's say, managers dictate based on the streams. If we manage to do that, there won't be any state here. So the problem with this approach is that if you started programming a long time ago, and if you remember, for example, a library called jQuery, this is somehow similar to what people were doing when jQuery was so popular. And it means that your state, the state management is scattered. So it's like distributed across your application in different places, in widgets that change that. This can work, and of course jQuery is not a bad library, but if you are thinking about doing it in a more structured way, we could try to keep those widgets simple and extract those pieces of state somewhere else. So we will see how we can repair that. But with this approach, you can see that you have to remember that those fields are defined over here and they are used over here. So it seems like it's different things are being mixed up, being compacted here. It would be a good idea to make those widgets do only one thing, just to display themselves, instead of doing the state and validating and other things. So we will see if we can achieve that. So the first thing would be to create a manager that will manage this particular screen. Now we will create a message, let's say a message form manager. Message form manager, like that. And inside we will be, let's create our first subject, which will be behavior subject of type string, because whenever you are typing something in the to field, it's a string. And let's do a seeded value, empty string. So as before, let's quickly create a stream. We will call it email. And there is this sign, $sign at the end. It's our convention, which designates that this is a stream. And this stream comes from the subject we created over here. And this should be, of course, a function. And let's add a sync as well. So another convention in to designate sync. Okay, I did sync like that. Here is something which I don't like, because in Dart you have streams, so you have the stream class, and in RxDart you have observable a class, which is basically the same thing. We already discussed that, but this naming I think may lead to some confusion. So in the previous episode I decided to use observable everywhere, but I think I'm gonna change this. I prefer using stream because it's just more clear. So just remember that you have two classes, one which is built into the Dart programming language, and the other observable is provided by RxDart. It would be great at some point that they manage to somehow unify that. It would be great if RxDart is part of the Dart programming language, but as of now, let's leave it like that. We have the stream and we have the sync. So now let's change our field, the to field, which is over here, so that it's reactive. So first of all, we will deal with validation later. So I will disable it for now. On saved, we won't need that, but I will disable it. And instead of using text form field, we will use just text field. So text form field is this wrapper around text field. We already discussed that, but just to repeat, it provides some additional features. For example, you can define a validator, you can do other sorts of things. And if we are going into the direction of reactive programming, we won't need that, because all that will be managed differently. To some extent, we could argue that text form field is magical because there are different fields and each part does something different. So you are again combining or mixing different things here, like validation. So you have to provide this function over here with the field. You are doing this on save, so you have to know how to assign the value from the field to a particular value which is defined in the state class, etc. Different things, and that's usually a sign that something is not okay, but not always. This doesn't mean that that's bad, it's just there's a room for improvement here. And we will try to do that, and then it's up to you to decide if you prefer this or reactive approach. So we changed text form field to text field because we don't need all those additional things. And what we need to do now, we need to wrap this field into our observer. Like that, and we need a stream, and we need on success context data, like that. So here we will do something like that. It's text field, so I believe. Okay. Done. Okay, so we wrap the text field we put it inside an observer class. We created a dummy stream which provides one value, which is the value is a string data or whatever you want. It's just for testing, and we defined on success. So it means that if there is a data, display the text field, and it's being done, we can see. But we also have this on error thing, so we can define that here. And there are a few things I would like to address here. So the first thing is that we could do that differently. We could use just a stream builder class, and we could use the builder method and define the error text here. So for example, like that. So now the idea is that the errors, the validation errors, should appear only if there is no value in our stream, which is provided by a manager. Remember that streams either provide values or errors. If they provide values, you just do something with those values, but they may also provide errors. So those two types of events are different, values and errors. So now we would like to adapt that to our situation here. And if there is a value, we won't do anything. We will just display the text field. But if there is an error in that stream, we will display the message below. Remember that we are just changing the first form field. So this error message is from, I clicked send, it's not related. So now let's quickly test this if it works. So right now it displays text field and it's being displayed by this part. So we just created a stream and it generated one event, and it was a success because it's a value and this part is being displayed. So let's change here the label text slightly, so like error. And if I save, nothing changes. So instead of using just, we will use error helper. So now as you can see, I have the error here and the error text below. So this stream generated an error, which also has a value of whatever. And this value, as you probably remember, is available here in the error variable. So if I replace this by error, I have whatever on the screen. So that's good. So we have those two paths. And I said that you could use Stream Builder because here you could pass the data directly And if it's null, the error message won't be displayed. I was thinking about it and I decided this is maybe not magical, but it's not obvious if you look at the code. And with this approach, you are seeing clearly the path. If we have a stream and it provides a value, we are generating a text field. But if we have an error, we are generating a text field with an error message. So it's like a clear separation between the happy path and the sad path, let's say. We will improve that later because this repetition is still ugly, but my idea was just to show you what we are trying to achieve here. Okay, having said that, now we can remove that so it's more clear. So now let's connect this observer with a real stream. So we need a manager, and we created that manager here, which has a subject, and then the subject provides both a stream and a sink for that particular field. So what we need to do is what we've been doing always up to this point, which is we need to access a manager using the provider class. Message for manager. Okay, we need to import that. And now in our overseer, we need to just register this new manager. So pretty standard messenger. Okay, we are registering. We could say overseer is hiring a new manager, so it needs to be registered here. And now from now on, we can just use the provider to access this particular manager down the widget tree. And this is the only thing we are accessing, and it will allow us to eliminate this state eventually. Okay, so we have the manager in the build method, and now we can just say manager email, like that. But we also need to react to changes now. So whenever someone types something, this changed, this value should be sent to the manager so that eventually it could validate that and make sure everything is okay. So how we send data to managers? Using sinks. This manager provides a sink, and text field of course provide a method on changed. So we can just create a method, and here we have a function which takes a value. So the value is the value being entered by users. And we can just say manager in email add value. I don't know why, but VS Code is so slow on my computer. So now we have that, and let's test it. Let's see if it works. So let's just go here, message for manager. Let's create the constructor, and let's do listen. So as you remember, the listen is a shortcut. We don't have to write stream, because if we are using the subjects from RxDart, we can directly do listen on email, but it means we are listening to the stream of that subject. And here we will have the value, and we will print this to the back console. So now whatever I type in the field, it should be displayed over here. It is. So I'm typing, and when I'm typing, the onChange method is being triggered, which then triggers which invokes the add method of the sink and adds the method for this manager, so that this data is available through the stream, which is provided by this manager as well. Nothing really different from what we did before, and here we can improve that. So as you can see, a value is being repeated. We can just write something like that. There is this concept in programming called point-free programming. It's a paradigm. If you're interested, I will cover that later, but if you're interested, read about this. So the idea is that in functional programming, you can construct functions in a way that you don't have to specify parameters, as we did just here. So onChange takes a parameter and add takes a parameter, but by using this sort of construction, we can avoid this repetition, and this somehow goes in line with the point-free programming approach. Okay, so now we have connected our manager, we have created a manager, we have connected, we made our field reactive. There's an observer which observes the streams of the manager, and then does something in response. If there's a value, it displays the text field, and if there's an error, it displays the text field with a notation that there is an error. Let's stop here, and in the next episode we will improve that by adding some validations and making it even more slick. Stay tuned.